Hey, everybody. I missed when everybody raised their hand for which area you're in. And I noticed the math didn't work out because I'm kind of a data person. So how many people are in manufacturing or operations? Yeah, good. That's my background. I'm Deb Sonnenberg. Right now I work at Vesta, Cymatrix, and Victor. We're a contract manufacturer of medical devices. My background is supply chain management. Decades and decades, okay? I've worked in a lot of different industries, whether it's avionics, defense contracting, acoustic guitar building, and I had the opportunity to work as operations manager in 2009, in the Missoula office for the 2010 census. Let me tell you, that was interesting. These people have 10 years to plan, right? You'd think they'd get it right. But anyway.
That is part of what we'll be talking about. Not the census, but the planning, of course. My name's Elizabeth Rissler Pratt. I have over 20 years of manufacturing experience in the dietary supplement world. And I have done time as a controller of a publicly held manufacturing facility and also focused on human resource for facilities. So not as diverse in the variety, but enjoy and love the manufacturing. And with that, before we start getting into stuff, I'd kind of like to go back to what Shane said right initially, is that since we are presenting right after lunch, please do get up, walk around at the back. We're just fine with that because we hate to see people nod off or...
I would feel real bummed. So how many people ate their lunch? All of it?
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna keep eyes on those people. That was a lot. I don't know. Mine's in the fridge. So, all right. So as leaders and managers, planning and organizing are two of our key functions that we do. I think the better organized we are, I believe truly that we're going to be more efficient and successful. Who can tell me what effective means? I looked up this, I wanted to make sure I had the definition right.
That's a good question.
Anybody? Anybody? I'm going to say that all the time. You guys know where that's from? Anybody? Anybody?
There's got to be a nerd in here somewhere.
I know. I was hoping. No? Let me read it. Successful in producing a desired outcome or result. Okay? So as we talk about effective, we need to think about that. We have an objective, right? A result that we're trying to achieve.
I didn't get it the first time.
You didn't?
No. I'm all slow.
He was
But
chewing.
you were chewing.
I know
You're
I
always
was, yeah.
chewing. Successful in producing a desired or intended result.
That's good.
Okay? So the effective planning also allows you to achieve the goals and the results you need, but yet planning also prepares you to deal more effectively with challenges and change. And I know every day in my job, I have changes. I don't know about you guys, but I have a list in the morning that I'm going to do. And I feel really good by the end of the day if I get half of it done, right? So you can say, well, maybe I'm a poor planner, but life happens. So there's 4 basic functions that a manager and leader does. One is planning, like we're going to talk about a little more in depth, where we're defining the goals. We're establishing our strategy on how we're going to make it happen. And we're also developing the sub-plans to coordinate it. We also then go into organizing. Once we get our plan together, we want to look at what needs to be done, who needs to do it, and how is it going to happen. Leading and directing the work that we've established through the planning and organizing process follows, and then controlling. I call it a little to the left, a little to the right, as we're coaching people, helping them through it, because we talked a little bit about our technique this morning, right? We don't want to make them feel bad, but we want to help them along the path.
And this is a representation of what the various levels of the managers, what they focus on. The top managers are focusing more on the strategic plan for business. That's a 3 to 5 year type of planning, so they've got a lot of time in that planning. Organizing, a little less leading, a little more controlling. The middle managers are your strategic, the 2 to 3 year planning, and they have a fair amount there, as well as leading does increase on that. And then our frontline managers are the operational plans, the 12 months or less. So they're focusing on taking those plans and getting all that organized and doing a lot of the leading, as we've heard so far today.
So planning, just to go through it again, it's a process that includes the definition of goals. What are we trying to do? We're coming up with a strategy on how we're going to make it happen, the actions that are needed to achieve the goals. And I thought maybe I should put some pros and cons. And I'm sure you guys are going to have some that I'd missed. So one is it provides a guide for action, right? We know what we need to do. We know where we're going. That's critical. It also is great for setting goal accomplishment. I don't know about you guys, but I always have a list, like I said, in the morning, but even at home, all my tasks, and it's very therapeutic to cross things off. Sometimes I just add them so I can cross them off. It improves the resource allocation and efficiencies. I don't know about your organizations, but we're always strapped for resources, whether it's people, space, parts, whatever it is. I think it provides motivation and commitment from the people that are on the team that are included in the plan. And I believe it also improves the relationship because they know what you want from them, right? You're communicating it in a way that hopefully they're going to deliver. It sets performance standards, and from that what I'm talking about is maybe we say that in order to get a document released out of doc control, it's going to take 5 days. At least they know how many days they have to get it out. It also allows us to go back and say, did you do it in 5 or was it 7 or was it 8, and why is that? And it also allows us to identify flexibility in the plan. So let's say we start accomplishing things in 3 days instead of 5 days, right? We're able to pull in our plan in the event we have a catastrophic event. And it reduces risk. And what I mean by that is by us knowing what our plan is and what we have to get done, we're always looking ahead and trying to mitigate if something goes off the rails. Can you think of any other ones I might not have captured here that you've experienced? Anybody?
Go ahead, there's got to be somebody.
Come on. Huh? Wow, I'm pretty good. Okay, so with that are cons, right? I tried to come up with some drawbacks of us establishing a plan. And one is it could prevent action. So excessive planning, a symptom of unhealthy perfection. Sometimes people just can't get the plan off their desk. I went through this with my husband presenting it and he took offense. But I do believe sometimes we get caught up in the details and we're not able to get the plan out there. And how do we know if we're successful? It might lead to complacency. People know they can get something done in 3 days, but Deb gave them 5. I'm not going to work on it till Wednesday. Maybe it prevents flexibility, meaning that you can't change. You don't feel like you can change because whoever is owner of the plan doesn't allow that kind of behavior. Same with creativity. Maybe people aren't coming forward and saying, hey, how about we do this? Let's stick to the plan. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. Any other cons that maybe you guys have experienced? Oh, come on. No?
Plan might be wrong.
Plan might be wrong. Hopefully we find that early, right? Thanks, Matt.
And then one thing on the cons is the flexibility, because you have whoever made the plan up, they are so invested in it that they take it as an offense when somebody wants to be a little flexible, or maybe someone has a better idea or a better way to do it. So making sure that it's open communication, going back to the emotional intelligence, and we're all here for one goal, which is to make production happen. And then planning. We have 4 aspects to the planning. We have the personnel, the levels of planning, the process, as well as frequency of planning and adjusting. And then the personnel, making sure that management is involved so that we have the resources that we need, and the plan has been rolled out to them, and they are on board with it, that they're ready for this production run to go, as well as that the plan and the implementation of the plan is robust enough for them. And then making sure that you do have your key contributors involved so that you roll it out and all the team members are committed to their part and parcel within that plan. We've all had those times when something's rolled out and a person really hasn't had a voice, or they haven't seen the plan ahead of time, and there's something that strikes them wrong, so you get that pushback and you don't get as efficient run of the production as what you could if you had personally made sure that it was rolled out and everybody was embracing it.
So I think sometimes also strategies are passed down into the organization, and some of them you're able to embrace because you know you can control them, right? They're part of your world. But yet your manager peer also has some, and maybe they're in conflict, but you're not realizing it because you're not sharing each other's plans. So I think it's critical that there's cross-pollination so that everybody succeeds. There's basically 3 levels of planning. I handed out, I'm sorry, I didn't do a good job of planning. I don't have enough copies, but what I've done here is I've come up with a strategic plan. It's the orange one, the top level one, and it's the Acme Kite Company. And strategic planning is usually done from a 3 to 5 year time frame. It's usually done by the executives of the organization. They have a vision. I liken it to they're at the 10,000 foot level perhaps, and they're looking outside of the airplane, and they can see some of the things that are on the ground, but they don't know what building it is or that there's cars parked there or anything like that. So they're saying, this is what I want my company to do. And it could be things like, how do I want to be perceived in the community? What do I want to do for the environment? What do my products want to do? What market segments do I want? Things like that, right? They have this vision and they say, let's do it. The next level is tactical, and they're gonna receive that strategic plan. And on the second page that's green, I took the liberty of saying the operations manager is going to take the strategic plan and they're going to apply it. So usually they're looking out 1 to 3 years. It could be, depending on the size of the company, a division, it could be a general manager, or it could be actually the department heads in that part of the company that are coming up with, ooh, I see what they want to do. They want product development, tie-dye kite, you know? I'm going to add that to my list, and I'm going to figure out how I can support it. And then we go down to the next level, which is operational planning, and that's the boots on the ground. Those are the people that, I'm telling you, they really know what they've got, what they need in order to achieve that. On the third page, I take it to that level where I talk about the production supervisor having an objective, and I'm going to walk through the process of planning using that sheet. So first of all, they're going to develop the objectives. My objective is to launch the new tie-dye kite design immediately, and I want to deliver 5,000 of them by the end of February. And what I'm doing is supporting the strategic product development plan initiatives, right? Get some new products out there. I want to determine what the tasks are to meet those objectives. I put a list together of, could be product design release, the build process established, tooling that I need in order to make it happen, personnel, who am I going to assign to do the job, what kind of training do I need to do. Next step is to identify the resources. So I decide, hey, first of all, I need to buy some tie-dye material. So I better get my buyer involved. And then I don't know how much I need, so I'm going to have to get my planner involved, right? Because I need bills of material and things like that. So taking it down another level. The fourth is to create a timeline. Sometimes the timeline is created by the end date, right? I know by the end of February I'm supposed to deliver 5,000, so maybe I'm going to back into it and see how much play I have in it. But I'm willing to bet that once you start going to everybody and saying, how long is it going to take you? How long is it going to take you to buy that material, Renee? She says, 5 weeks. And I'm like, I'm already in trouble, right? So finding out what the lead times are and then massaging the plan in order for it to achieve the long-term goal. We also have to decide on how we're going to track and assess whether we're on plan. You know, is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it a percentage complete? What is it? We need to decide that. And I think we need to communicate it to the team members. The next one is finalize the plan. And I don't know if you noticed on here, I say it's never final. So you're going to issue the plan, and then we're going to massage it as we learn things, right? My mantra is there's always a strategy behind the strategy, right? You're always planning for the worst case. So you might say, I am going to hit that, and I'm only going to use Sally to build my kites. But you know what? I would probably train Jane just in case Sally is sick or whatever. So it's important to make sure that you're always looking ahead and coming up with your overall strategy. And then distribute the plan to all involved to make sure they know they own it, right? They know what they need to deliver. What's next? Questions?
And then frequency of updates. That's not necessarily updating the plan as you're going. Once it's put out there, there's going to be small amounts of updates, but continual updates need to be kept to a minimum. But this is talking more about the frequency of communication, and I think that was mentioned with Steve earlier, and on the communication slide with Steve Jobs, making sure that people are communicating. The shorter the timeline, as we know, the more frequent the updates are needed. The inventory raw materials coming from the East Coast, there's snowstorm, there's semis going off the road. Prep your people to make sure that you have a contingency plan in place in case your semi is one of those that go off the road, or the time when the ports were closed, letting your customers know. So that's pushing it back even further, making sure that you're communicating realistic expectations for when you'd be able to get product in as well as get the production out. So that's more of a long backward look, but the short timeline when it starts getting closer, that's the internal communications between the quality and the receiving and the production group. Critical inch, making sure that you're paying attention to the next action item, and that way you'll be able to accomplish and stay on your plan and meet your objectives if you're paying attention to that next step and making sure that everyone involved is paying attention to that next step. And then communicating, of course, if they're not able to achieve that for whatever reason. This is a relationship slide. Wanted to point it out for the scope, the time, the cost, and the quality, and how those all relate to each other. That they are interdependent, and when you have your kite company, they want to put out 100 kites rather than 75 kites. Your customer comes and says, yeah, I know we had this plan and we're going to increase it to 100. So we know that we need to increase our time and we need to increase the cost. And then you have a customer or maybe even management that says, we have this order and we need to put it out in a week less, a month less. The timeline has been shortened. So you go back and you say, okay, that just means a little more money because we're going to have to put on more shifts or we're going to have to do overtime. But there may be a time when you're up against an issue where you need to put something out quicker than what you originally had anticipated. And what would you anticipate will happen if the scope of the job doesn't change? You still have the volume you have to get out, but in a shorter period of time, and you're not able to throw more money or resources at it. What do you think would happen in that instance?
Quality decreases.
What's that?
Quality decreases.
Yep. We try to go faster and quicker and cut corners.
What happens in this room? No, they don't have that problem.
No. And you know what? We might meet that timeline, but I do believe that I've seen a time or two where we met the timeline, the quality was not as good as what our specification said, and of course, that product comes back to us, so it ends up taking 2, 3, 4 more times, how many ever, as well as, oh, so much more cost for us because it has to be reworked and then you have loss. And so that's a shout out to manufacturing folks.
And injuries.
Injuries, true, very true. Yeah, when you start going faster, you're not paying attention to some of your safety rules.
What else happens? Cost. Cost? No? Errors?
Yep.
Chaos? You guys ever, can you say chaos?
Yep,
Yeah.
Stress, morale issues,
yep,
culture sucks, I hate it here, I hate my job.
yep. Okay, Shane's standing up. Does anybody else need to stand up? I think he ate a full meal. Anybody else?
I did. Just trying to work it off right now.
Okay, just checking. Okay.
Okay, the other area that we wanted to talk about was organizing. The word comes from the word organ, which means parts and components, and there's 2 major ingredients of that, and that would be the parts and components as well as their relationship to each other. I don't know if sometimes you guys' days feel like that, but, or that, right? Somebody's
Those are
chasing
the
you.
good days.
So the process of organizing involves the following steps. Number 1, you're going to take the plan that you created while you were planning, and you're going to align all the work and tasks into the proper departments, whether it's purchasing or it's QA or it's receiving or whatever it is. You're going to go to that lead and the department lead, the manager, and ask them, who can I have, because this is the task I want to complete, and ideally you're getting the most qualified person, right? I'd protest if you don't, okay? Especially if you have a plan. If you don't have a plan, then you don't deserve them. But if you got a plan, I think you need to make sure you get the right people. The other thing is delegating the authority, and I think we talked about it earlier this morning about learning to delegate, right? Delegating your authority and defining the responsibility and expectations and being able to create that trust. I realize sometimes we get disappointed, but that's our opportunity to coach. A little to the left, a little to the right. Next time it's going to be better, right? And then establish the formal reporting relationship. If you have to use other departments to support your plan and you have another department manager or lead, clarifying that the individual that's been assigned to your plan is the person you're going to go to get updates, that you don't have to go through another level in order to know where you stand. Does that make sense?
How are we doing around the room with expectations in this reporting relationship? You guys feel like you're doing well? Raise your hand if you guys think you got that figured out. There's a couple. We have opportunity for improvement there?
Always. Always. I think if anybody's done, they don't realize what they need to do, so.
And then this goes back to the feedback loop, the lessons learned. What do we do once our project's completed? And do we ever not look behind us? We just go forward. We don't pay attention to what we did before. Yeah, that happens. And has that served us well?
Right.
So we do need to do the lessons learned to find out what we did well as, of course, what we can improve. And did we capture the information or did we capture the right information? Frequently we'll capture information that's time-consuming and laborious and it's totally worthless. So keeping it succinct and reducing the burden is critical in order to actually capture information. And then what do we do with the information once we have it? What do we do with those lessons learned? So.
Do you have some examples you're going to hit on?
Why, yes, we do.
Nice one.
So we put together just a very fundamental example of lessons learned process just to get you thinking. So we want to identify the opportunity for improvement, right? The output did not meet the expectation. I didn't hit 5,000, I only hit 4,000 Ks. Or I was able to get 6,000. Or I completed it by mid-February. Or my plan objectives were exceeded either by time, efficiencies, or quality. Could be. Maybe scope. I want to take that and I want to apply those as lessons learned. I want to identify the gap between the expected performance and what I actually did. And keep in mind, it could be positive or it could be negative. And then I want to do a root cause analysis. And I'm not saying that you have to do it, the 5 whys or the fishbone or anything, but I think it is important to pull the emotions out because everybody's going to have an opinion, right? They're going to think this is what happened and that's what happened. And I think we need to make sure that when we look at things, it's data-driven.
That's good.
So the goal is to identify what caused the gap in performance, regardless of whether it was negative or positive.
I know you're like your own little cheering section.
All right. This is how we stay awake. This is how I stay awake.
So you're going to be over there pretty soon?
That's not water.
Yeah, I saw beer in the fridge, so I just want to say.
I don't need that to be happy.
Oh, okay. And the last step is corrective actions. You want to be specific with what you identified as the outcome. Who, what, when, and we may accept the risk, okay? It could be that we identified a gap, but it's okay. It could be that our gap is we projected 5 days, but we did it in 3, but maybe there was special circumstances happening there. Maybe we had extra help and that's why we did it. So we want to look, do we mitigate or do we accept it? Because maybe it is an acceptable risk because it gives us pad. I call it sandbagging, but.
So before you moved on,
Yeah.
do you have a case study or something that you could share, a personal example, Deb, or even use?
Yes, why, yes, I do. If in this little packet that I have at the desk, I have 2 examples of project plans that weren't filled out. These are things you can download off the internet. But this one with the green banner, I'm going to use the Acme Kite Company. And so I sat down with my group, and you know what? I didn't wait till the end of the project. I gathered lessons learned as we went through it, right? As we identified a shortcoming, we would talk about it. So using this form, I took the liberty of adding an additional 2 columns, the due date and the completion date, because I think those are critical to have on a lessons learned. So let me just walk through the middle one. Material availability was the topic that I identified as a lesson learned, and I was short string. I didn't have enough string to complete my 5,000 kites. And my impact was high. And I rated it as a high impact because I wasn't able to deliver to my customer. Customer satisfaction being important, right? The rank is something that you usually do when you get in as a team. So the people that were assigned to this plan would sit down and say, well, I think that one's the most important, or this one really affected us. And it could be they have more than one. I said need to vote because I didn't have a team. My lessons learned was that my bill of material was incorrect, number 1. And number 2, I had excessive scrap. Somebody couldn't just measure the right length. I kept having to scrap short pieces of string, and tying them together was not acceptable.
You guys never have problems with engineering, do you? Shane? You guys got it all figured out, right? Yeah, you guys got it all dialed in.
It's probably the people.
Reflect problems with reality, I believe.
It's not good engineering.
Yeah,
Some operators don't know how to measure each other.
that's right. That's what I was saying.
Could have been metric, could have been US.
Yeah, it could have been. I was bowling last night. It could be a lot of things, right? So then I identify, is it a best practices or is it a problem to be resolved? And to me, this was a problem to be resolved. A best practice would be that maybe we identified a new process that allowed us to shrink it from 5 days to 3 days. To me, that's best practice. Ooh, we want to adopt that. That's a great idea, you guys. Okay? Could be that we get our string already cut, right? Instead of cutting it in-house. I have here the actions required is that I got to fix the bill of material. I got to add yield quantity. I didn't forecast that somebody couldn't cut the right length. And then I'm probably going to get with purchasing to say, what's my lead time? How do I mitigate my risk if I have this happen again? Could be. So I see it as a quick hit because I know what I got to go fix, which means, bam, I can do it. Short term would maybe be 1 to 3 months. Longer term is if you've got to change like all your processes in your company. And I'm saying ops and purchasing own it, and I want it done by 1/31/19. But the main idea here is that, if you go through this exercise and you make your lessons learned, don't put it in the folder file, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's so critical for everybody to go back, take the lessons learned, and be better the next time we do the plan.
So Deb, what have you found that's most effective to revisit this? Do you do this daily, weekly? What kind of cycle are you looking at?
I would say weekly to begin with,
Okay.
right? I think you need to get everybody to commit to what they're going to do and when they're going to resolve it. Once you've got that, you have a good idea of follow-up.
Do you have that like a pattern where it's a consistent day, or is it just kind of whenever it works, and because it just never works, you postpone that for 3, 6
Yeah,
weeks, months?
I would like to believe no, because I'd like to believe I'm selling a bunch of kites, okay? So I'm on it.
No, I'm talking about reality is that's the challenge, right, is to do it regularly.
It is.
Standard work and be disciplined. No matter if the building's on fire, you're still going to have your stinking meeting.
That's right.
And follow up on those action items.
And
That's right.
preferably before the next production run, when you're doing it on a product by product, so that you can make those improvements. And you'd asked about a personal experience. This is not a manufacturing, except it kind of does go to the hotel. I had the opportunity to coordinate a conference for about 200 of my peers. And the customer complaint came in that it took too long to get between, or it was too short of time to get between the different sessions. And it was one of those things where you learned that 200 people do not turn like a school of fish. So therefore you need to expand. It's not 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They need to go out and they need to think about things and get a drink of water. So you need about 15 minutes for at least for 200 people. The other lesson learned, and again, this is more the mental lesson learned, so you don't have to have the labor of some large different spreadsheet, but presentations. You don't do presentations off of a flash drive. If you do, it's going to seize up, and then once it seizes up, you need to take the flash drive out, and that's the time that your machine decides it wants to do the updates. Has anybody ever experienced that? So note to everyone here, if you're doing a presentation, drag it onto the desktop. I think we're fortunate doing Google Drive's slides presentation. That depends on whether or not your Wi-Fi is strong enough or you have a hard line. So lessons learned. Take what you've learned, improve for the future. I know that's what we all want.
That's really good. Yep.
So do any of you guys have a good lessons learned story? Come on. Manufacturing people, they always do. Really?
The planning, what's working for you guys? You guys have anything similar that you guys are doing on a regular basis?
Yeah. How many people do lessons learned in their organization? You can just do, if you don't want to, if your manager's here, just kind of like that. Nobody?
Could also fall under the process improvement umbrella.
Right. Okay. You do?
Yeah,
Yeah? And,
usually it's a result of a corrective action. That gives us an idea. Like corrective actions, this things opportunities. So we should probably do it outside of that.
so what industry are you in?
Fabrication.
Fabrication? Good. So do you review them then to make sure they're complete?
Yes.
You do? Nice.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes there are projects where we have multiple lessons to learn. There's multiple corrective actions. I guess it's just a tool to use to spur that conversation, talk to people about what happened, what could we do.
I can give you an example of on the fly. We are building a product line which in the past has had maybe 80% yield. It's a very difficult product to build. And in the last couple of weeks, it's in the high 90s.
Wow.
And the question, which usually doesn't get asked, but we made sure we asked, both myself and the lead, was, what are we doing different? Why is it 90-some percent, 97%? What's different?
That's good.
You know, to have people think in a different way. Like, sometimes we do focus on the negatives instead of the positives. So trying to help people think that way is, I think we get little nuggets there that we might be able to, you know, build upon. So,
This is a great tool. So what do you do when you assign it to Shane in engineering? He's got an action item, and he comes back the next week and he doesn't have it done. How do you handle that?
shame them.
That's what normally happens. Yeah, I know what that's like.
Well, I think depending on who it is, but I think the organization, like we talked about, the culture, they have to embrace this. They have to adopt and embrace this as the way we do business, right? And that they get peer pressure from everybody, right? Because if I have to do it, I expect you to do it, Shane, right? And do it well. So,
And
So I have a question.
okay.
So what, as you're doing this, and lessons learned, I know you want to focus on positives too. What do you do with people that tend to make excuses or point the finger everywhere else? How do you redirect that?
I personally would go back to that little flow process that says I'm doing the root cause analysis and I'm trying to take the emotions out of it, right? The feelings and the attitude as well as opinions, and base it on some kind of facts. That's how I would do it. But yes, you always have those individuals that participate. Hopefully they're the minority. I think by leading by example, you know, because you will always have negative things that have happened, whether the assembler didn't measure right or can't calculate right, you know, those kind of things where it's really hard to, you don't want to make it about a person. I'm sorry, Shane.
Right. Typically, when we have quality issues, we try not to make it about the person because it's a system that you're evaluating.
Right.
Comes back to Edward Deming's quote from earlier, right?
It's
Yeah.
How much percent of it's due to the human being?
one.
About 1% at the end of his
1%.
life.
Yep.
So we're not doing something well as leaders and managers. We need to figure it out. We can't blame everyone else, right?
which that kind of dovetails into making sure that you have the right people in the room when you're talking about lessons learned, making sure that you have your managers and upper management on board so that whatever has come about with regards to the mitigation, that you do have that support to be able to buy that upgraded tooling, or perhaps you are accepting a lower quality because you're not being allowed to get that tooling at this point in time, but everybody's in the room at the same time and they hear the same thing, and hopefully you'll find that if it is somebody pointing a finger and different lead times are off and it is a whole succession of issues, that you do have a review that if it is consistent, that it's robust, and you'll be able to identify and then put into place correction, whether it's updating specifications or upgrading the machine. You know, the machine isn't going to be able to put out what the management expectations are.
Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
Do you want to reframe it and
Yeah.
try and get
Well-
some resolution?
no, I think that there's just certain personalities out there that will have a hard time accepting their role in certain situations, or instead of trying to find solutions, they're fearful that even if no one's going to say, hey, you screwed up here, they just want to make excuses instead of finding solutions. You know.
So how do we
And some
change
work
that?
for very rarely.
What have you guys found that works to change that kind of behavior?
I think you sit them down, and one of the things I always talk about is that when you want to make a performance intervention, your main strategy is to get their agreement to change. That's what you're after. So in that situation, I'd sit them down and talk about the excuses, and always have a good example, and then just go through a flow chart of, you identify the problem. You know, if you don't get agreement to change there, then you go to the impacts. You explain to them how it's impacting the business, you know, that other people are having to make up your work, or there's rework that's happening, or people are waiting for your work, whatever the case is, and that's impacting scheduling and planning and et cetera. If that doesn't work, then you go to the consequences. And you say, okay, well, I've tried to explain the problem, I've tried to explain the impacts, and so if this continues to happen, here's the consequence. Always remember, a threat that isn't implemented is a lot more powerful than a threat that is implemented, because once you implement the threat, it goes away. So once you discipline someone, that impact goes away, if you will. But that's not to say you shouldn't identify the consequence and do something about it. And then finally, if that doesn't work, you mandate compliance. You know, so the idea is you try to get commitment, want to. If that doesn't happen, then you go to have to.
Yeah, get buy-in first.
Yeah.
Really good, next one.
I think we experienced something similar. It was a lessons learned, maybe, might be reaching here. I'm going to embarrass Misty to talk about, we had an individual who modified safety equipment, and we were trying to get that individual to understand that, you know, they thought they were improving their throughput, and we were more worried about the safety. And we implemented this because of an injury that they incurred. And they just, for whatever reason, could not understand that what we did it for was their safety. I mean, maybe you can explain it because you were more on the ground working with them.
I think it didn't matter how many times we said it, she just wouldn't wrap her head around it. And then I think it was something simple, just getting her to understand that you can't. I can't remember what wording.
You simply can't bypass the door.
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't about production, it wasn't about her, it didn't matter if she had to sit there for 10 minutes, it was about the safety and the concern for her health, but she just could not get that. And I mean, there was like tons of meetings about it.
It took a lot of approaches and trying different ways to communicate. Sometimes that works. Not all times, but yeah. Anything else?
Okay, so some of our takeaways, of course, planning is good. I think we all know that, the strategy and the goal setting.
Contingency planning, learning to be nimble, looking ahead, watching out for what's going on. Always have a strategy behind your strategy, just in case.
Organizing and making sure that you have the appropriate and the adequate resources, whether it's raw materials or personnel.
And looking at the critical inch, always be watching your action plan to make sure that the next thing is in alignment, right? We haven't missed anything and nothing's changed.
And then the 3 R's, roles, responsibilities, and respect. That's been touched on previously, making sure that roles are assigned, responsibilities are explained, and then respect that the people that we've given that responsibility to will follow through and perform as requested.
And you want to make sure that the management's involved. And once again, one of the reasons is that we all have a bunch of goals and objectives we're trying to meet, and they could be in conflict with each other, or we're using the same resources, right? I don't want to get upset because somebody's not supporting my effort and I'm trying to do it alone. I want to make sure they understand, so perhaps we can share our resources and we both can succeed.
And as we've already talked, the lessons learned and the process improvements, and then keeping in mind the relationship between scope, time, cost, and how that impacts quality.
So, you know, having done planning for a long time, I was trying to think of examples that I've lived through and been able to be nimble, maybe because I didn't plan on the right thing. I was working on the East Coast for a medical device manufacturer, and it was Thanksgiving weekend almost, and I was living in Montana, so I was commuting. And I had a revenue plan. I was the supply chain director, and I had a revenue plan, and man, I had it nailed. I mean, I was just like, I'm gonna be done early, this is cool. So the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I was gonna get on a plane. I stopped in at 4 a.m. and saw my stockroom people, made sure everything was going well. Got on a plane, ended up in Minneapolis. I thought I'd call the buyer planners, you know, they were in by then. I call them up and they're like, well, we got some bad news for you, Deb. I said, what's going on? Well, our supplier of printed wiring boards just burned down. I was like, what? How can that be, you know? I was counting on those boards. What am I gonna do? Yeah. So we're scrambling to see how bad the fire was and what we had lost. And for the most part, everything was lost. I mean, it was a total. Anyway, what I was able to do and still make my plan was we had units that were in service, right? Customer service. They were units that you would replace if something went down, but they were all acceptable printed wiring boards in the units. And by getting the other departments involved, we were still able to complete our plan, deliver everything to the customer, and hit our revenue plan. That was luck, okay? But I think also it was having that good relationship with all the other departments where we all knew we were trying to hit this goal. How can we do that? How can we do it? So the result, lesson learned, is that we made sure that we had more than one supplier going forward.
What's that dealing with? You're talking about contingency and having these backup plans. What, one word, what would we be considering that? What would that be? You guys, any of you guys have QMS systems or ISO or any of those kind of things in your organization? Raise your hands. Okay. You guys know about this also? It's in the standard throughout there. They have a whole new section devoted to it.
Catastrophic.
One word. Starts with an R.
Redundancy? Risk management.
Risk.
Yeah.
What risk are you willing to take? Cybersecurity, any of you guys have issues there? I'd say most people in Montana are rolling the dice with cybersecurity. It's craziness. Anyone want to take the risk on your whole network and your organization being shut down? Think about planning for your cybersecurity, planning for how do you have something if that machine is your only machine, calendaring. What happens if that thing goes down? We done? What happens if something happens in your dipping, in your electro polish? Are you done? You need to think about these things. That's part of planning. Risk.
Right.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Alistair.
Hi everybody, Alistair Stewart.
Yeah, he's my
Montana
colleague
Manufacturing
over in
Extension
Bozeman.
Center.
Yep.
Just a comment on planning and risk. We've noticed that the prevailing sentiment towards cybersecurity risk is I'm too small, it's not going to happen here, right? Never going to happen to me. I have two clients, so I cover Bozeman and the southwestern part of the state in addition to doing some statewide programming. I have two clients in Gallatin County who both were cybersecurity risk deniers. And one of them had a super good experience as a result of somebody else's denial, and one of them had a super bad experience. I'm just going to tell you two stories that I think will perhaps focus your attention on planning to identify and mitigate risks. I have a client who is a 40% supplier of a commodity product to a large OEM. He has a competitor who's a 60% supplier, right, to a large OEM thing. Right? The other supplier is located in the Rust Belt. The president of the much larger competitor in the Rust Belt was in Asia. And the controller, you can see where this is going, right? The controller of the competitor to my client received an email that was clearly written in the president and CEO's personal writing style. And it went, oh man, I found a great resin supplier. You know we were having trouble with getting on-spec resin and this specialty resin, but I found a great new supplier. I think we're going to get into an arrangement with them, right? Next day, controller got an email. Yeah, we're just wrapping up some of the commercial arrangements. It's going to happen. I need you to wire $400,000. Now, I'd have fired the controller, right? But the controller followed the wire instructions, and he did it twice more. Upon the third time, the CEO got a call on his cell phone from the bank. Okay, the OEM customer to the competitor in Ohio who just suffered, right, a financial cyber attack, right? So the OEM customer is launching a new product line, right? He's looking at the two. It's very similar to the established product line where my guy's got 60, the hacked guy had, my guy has 40, the hacked guy had 60. Anyway, new product launch coming in a few months, and they want some new parts, right, to go on the thing that the OEM client sells. So my client, right, we're working our butts off on coming in at or a nanocent below the target price, right? We're figuring out how we're actually going to make money doing this, right? We're looking at the volumes, the setup times, some of the other stuff, which I shouldn't go into in any detail. When lo and behold, the OEM withdraws the competitor to my client from the competitive process, right? The competitor had disclosed, because they were required to under the terms of their supplier arrangement, so they had been the victim of a cyber attack, right? And they lost, I don't know if they ended up getting the money back, I don't think they did. But my guy got 100% of the business.
Wow.
Right, so that's a good thing. That was a good thing, right? But it could just as easily have been my client, because I know exactly where he is on cybersecurity, and it's back in the Stone Age. It might even be a little before the Stone Age. So that was just a beneficial, right? It was totally serendipity, but it could have been him. It's just he's much smaller. I don't think anybody's looking at him yet. But if that amount of business had gone away from his #1 customer and his reputation had been sullied in the marketplace, he's done.
Right.
He's out of business. The other one, I have a client in Galveston Valley who makes a highly engineered product that in the latest release is connected, is a part of the industrial Internet of Things. It operates in a very harsh environment, doing some gnarly stuff. I mean, I can't go too far. Anyway, it had been engineered, right, to do its function, right, and then my client heard about, right, Industry 4.0, the industrial Internet of Things, figured out that the market could benefit from solutions which included connection to the industrial Internet of Things in the functionality. Whereupon somebody hacked in and disabled the Internet of Things connectivity. There were tons of security flaws, right, in the solution because they rushed to get it to market. That had without boring you with the details, that had a 1 week P&L hit of $60,000. They fixed it right away, but they have $60,000 less in their financial resources than they had before the cyber attack. And I don't want to steal more of your time, but this idea of having a plan for emerging risks, right? This is not stuff in some management book somewhere. This is real and happening right now. Thank you for letting me steal some time.
We've got about 5 minutes.
Perfect.
I think we're done.
Any other feedback for them or questions? Any planning challenges you guys have right now that you want to discuss at all? Take a couple questions.
How many people have active plans right now in here? Yeah? Good, Misty. Not that many, huh? All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
guys.
Thanks.
Cyber attacks. It's definitely real. I'm a one-man shop at the moment, but I've been hacked by multiple foreign actors trying to get access to my technology. So if you're not taking that threat seriously, I would reconsider, because they're out there, they're very active, and they're really causing some serious problems, especially financially. Now I have to go meet my people in airports and I can't even email them. So take that into consideration when you go back to work. If you've got some proprietary things and processes that are stored on servers or Dropbox or something not safe, I would definitely reconsider. Anyway, if everyone will stand up for just 1 minute, we're not gonna do calisthenics again.
Come on. It's time for the afternoon 7th inning stretch. I
I just gotta sit down and public speaking. I'm nervous. If everyone would take their right hand, point out, and start making a circle. Okay? And stop. Keep your hand up. Take your left hand. Make a square. Okay? Now start making a circle and the square at the same time. Wait, no, that's terrible. No, you're terminated. That is you multitasking. We are not scientifically programmed to multitask. Our brains can't handle it. Yet TEDx has speeches on how to be a great multitasker. If you've seen these people driving around and they've got their cell phones, and they're like, LOL, and boom, it's happening. Do you want that to happen when you've got a problem that you have to deal with in your shop and you're trying to multitask? So the first thing I'm going to say about problems is I've got a lot of them. The second thing is the only way you can solve your problems is if you have to focus. So I'll start a little bit by talking a little bit about myself. My name's Tad Olson. I got the disease about 22 years ago. I call it entrepreneurism. My family had it, passed it down to me. I started my first business then. I've been buying existing businesses and turning them around, or starting businesses from scratch for the last 22 years and selling them. The last 4 years, I have been trying to penetrate an industry, manufacture 22 caliber ammunition. Yeah, you guys can sit. Sorry. Yeah, that industry has not been penetrated since 1952. They've tried many times with a lot more money than this bootstrap entrepreneur has, and failed. What's the difference? All of you have competitors, and all of your competitors have the same exact problems. It's who solves the problems better wins. So I've had competitors in this space. I've actually met with a few of them that are funded by venture capital firms and things like that. And I have the exact same challenges and exact same problems that they do, and they've got way more financial resources, but do they approach the problems the same way that I do? As a bootstrap entrepreneur, I had a job till I was 20 years old. I had $4,000 saved up. I started my first business, and everything else has been history, bad and good. But what you learn as a bootstrap entrepreneur when you don't have money to solve your problems, you have to find alternative ways. And that's one of the things that I want to encourage you to think about today as we go through this, that adding is not always the answer, and the answer is often right in front of your face. So, all right, do you have problem solvers or problem identifiers? I'll tell you, one of the first businesses I had, I put a sign on the door that said, "Do not knock on this door unless the building is on fire." It got to that point. Because why? They ignored problems, and then they up-dumped the problem to me. That's what I called it. As managers, are we in a position where everybody just up-dumps their problems on us? Right? It's a problem. It's a problem that you can work through, but you have to get a team of people that are willing to work on those problems on their own. So what I'm going to talk about is not trying to solve those problems on your own. Now, if you take on all the responsibility with all your people that are working underneath you, so to speak, they're going to up-dump every problem they possibly can on you until the end of time. It's never going to stop. But if you empower them, as we've mentioned in lots of these presentations, and give them the confidence that they're smart enough to figure out these problems on their own and the guidance on how to solve these problems, they'll stop up-dumping on you, and you can pick and choose what problems you want to be a part of and which ones you don't want to participate in trying to solve. But in order to build a team of problem solvers, there's a big difference, and there's going to be some redundancy here. And the reason there's redundancy is I turned my presentation in first, and you guys stole a whole bunch of my stuff. Just kidding. Yeah. But the truth is that there's only so much you can say about leadership, because leadership has to do with people, period. You know, we can break this down to multiple different categories, but how do you get your people to really want to help and really want to solve the problems with you versus, it's another task that you've given them to go solve? So I'll start by saying leadership is a choice. It's not a rank. Most of the people in this room have been ranked up. You know, you might have been the technician, you might have been great at what you did, and someone said, boy, they're sharp, they show up every day on time, they're reliable. You know, lots of these qualities and characteristics that I look for in managers, I'm going to give them a shot at management. But just because you're called manager now doesn't mean you're a leader. You have to choose to be a leader. And there's a big difference. Leaders, they follow because they want to. You want to follow a leader. We all want to follow a leader. Doesn't matter who it could be a religious thing. It could be a president. Whatever it is, we look to people to inspire us and lead. That's just a human trait. Rank has authority. They follow because they have to. So what's your leadership style? The people that are working with you, do they follow because they have to or because they really want to? And don't answer that question, especially in front of the group, but really think about it. You know, do they really want to follow you, or do they follow you because they're going to get in trouble if they don't? And that's a pretty tough transition for some people, especially when they're trying to get people to respect them. You know, it might be your first time leading people. You've got a group and you're trying to get them to complete their task. Well, don't be a taskmaster. That's how you get them to complete their tasks. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how it works. This is where the redundancy comes in, and I should spend 2 hours on this because it's so important. Leaders are always looking out for their people. The authoritarian is constantly reminding them who their leader is. Have you seen that happen? Have you worked for those people before? That's why I quit my last job. He's an authoritarian, and I couldn't stand it. I'm like, I left the manager, not the company. And I said, I'm never working for somebody like that again. Unfortunately, I haven't. I just turned into him. I'm just kidding. The only way to build a team, if you want to solve problems like a well-oiled machine, you need your people to want to solve problems. Again, it's redundant, but I'll give you an example. You have to start making the best work environment that they've ever worked in. I've been fortunate over the years to hire some really good people. At this point, it's run the gamut. In the beginning, I guess you could say that I had a guillotine sitting outside of my office, and I had very low tolerance. I'm still impatient. And I fired fast. I didn't waste any time with people, but I learned that that's a terrible way to do it. I didn't grow people. I just didn't have the patience or time or money to be dealing with all these problems anymore. What I've learned over the years and 300 plus employees is I've been the problem the first 10 years of owning businesses. It was me. And when you start at 20 years old, you know everything. And even 40, and some people never learn that they don't know everything. But I will tell you that I learned from a great mentor when I was about 21 years old. I thought he was pretty creepy at the time. He said, let me give you a piece of advice. Wake up every morning and be as a child. I'm like, I'm 21. I don't really understand or comprehend weird stuff like that. My brain doesn't work in that way. But it really made sense because we're here learning today, right? I have 4 kids. We're talking about employees. I've had lots of kids, and in some ways, you have to treat them the same. In some ways, you have to treat them differently. How many times, if you have a child or children, have you had to tell them to say please and thank you? Thousands of times. Why is it that it's the same with employees? It's just human. But what we can learn is that every day we wake up, we can be as a child and learn from the people in the room. I'm learning things today. You can't sit over there just because you're in management, and I've been running my own show for 20-some years, that I know everything. As a matter of fact, I try and wake up every day as a child and learn something. Because everyone you meet, everyone you come in contact with, there's something you can learn from them, especially employees. Admit your mistakes loudly and often. Go out of your way to make sure they're taken care of. Are you really going out of your way to make sure they're taken care of? I submit that I have very loyal people because I'm very loyal to them. I don't ask for them to be loyal first in exchange for money. Money is just an exchange of goods, but it's really meaningless in the employee-employer, manager-managee relationship. It's all about loyalty and trust, and we've talked about that. Lead by example. You're not the smartest one in the room, so let's think about it. If you've got a better idea, tell me. Let's do it. Let's try it. Praise, don't punish. Simple acknowledgments. We've heard these, but help them more if they make the same mistakes. We've hit on this without exactly saying it today, but help them more if they make the same mistakes. Well, that seems counterintuitive. No, it doesn't. Because if they make the same mistake over and over and over again, and I'm not talking 50 times, at that point you probably should address it a different way, but over and over again, if you're that patient, and I'm not patient, but if you prove your patience to them that, hey, I'm willing to help you, let's get this figured out, whatever that task may be that they continue to struggle with, they're going to be the most loyal person that has ever worked for you because you're the one that gave them the time. So don't get impatient with them. 80% of the employees will be fairly easy to get behind you. People inherently want to do well. You're definitely part of that group. People saw that in you, and you've been asked to be a manager. 10% are simply in the wrong role. I've heard this in our conversations today. What you may have is someone's in the wrong role. They're just not cut out for that specific task. For whatever reason, it's not your job to diagnose it once you've determined that they're just in the wrong role. But it's your responsibility to identify whether they're in the right role or in the wrong role. And if they're in the wrong role, give them an opportunity somewhere else. And that's where your communication with the other end of the sticky band, or whatever you referred to it as, you talk to them. This is what they're good at. This is what they're not so good at. Is there a fit within our organization for them? But that's only 10%. Don't instantly assume, let's just get rid of Charlie over here. 10% have too much internal noise, outside problems. Everybody has problems. We're going to talk about specifically how we solve problems, but you can't have employees without their personal problems coming into the building every single day. Can't. It's impossible. And if you expect that to happen, you're totally unrealistic and you're going to be disappointed every day. You are. What you can do is give those people more of a chance. In the beginning, I didn't. If you showed up late too many times or whatever it was, you're done. That's it. Why are you late? That's what I started asking. Why are you late? I didn't ask that question before, but then I started asking that question. Then I started asking lots and lots and lots more questions and trying to help understand that person. And as a result, and I'll give you a real life example. One of the first businesses I owned, I was the youngest in the organization. There's about 100 people. I hired a female that was younger than me. She had broken her back in a car wreck when she was in high school. She was probably 22 or 23 when I hired her. But I interviewed her and I could see right away she's sharp, really smart. I wanted her on board. What I wasn't expecting, what I didn't realize at the time is that those physical problems, she's a little overweight because of inability to, she was kind of crippled up. Smoked a lot of cigarettes, and all of those personal problems started to have a real big impact on work. Showing up on time, showing up at all because of illnesses, things like that. But at that point, I had understood, okay, that's a smart person. I want to give them every chance I possibly can, no matter how many outside problems they have. And sometimes they're not going to come around. They're just not. But trust me when I say this, give them every opportunity you possibly can. You can afford to give. Financially, your time is valuable, all those things.
We wouldn't have Steve Rucker if that.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. What Steve spoke about earlier. She ended up starting yoga. And within a year, back problems started to go away. Much healthier, stopped smoking. Most productive employee I ever had, and as a matter of fact, I had her at 3 different businesses that I owned. Then I moved back to Montana, and I was just thinking about her the other day. I'm like, I wonder if I could find her a better job, because I owe her a huge debt of gratitude for how much help she's given me in all these businesses. And she was always there, and I was there for her, sure. But this is really important as a leader. It's easy to get impatient with these people. I certainly was, and I still will be from time to time, but I got to remind myself of that story that the best, most loyal people, usually they're really appreciative that you've given them that extra time, extra help. Someone was talking about favoritism and things like that. They might turn out to be one of the best people you work with. Okay, let's get into real problem solving. As I said, I've been in the problem-solving business forever, and as much as we want to avoid problems, they don't go away unless you solve them, period. They don't. You can ignore them as much as you want, but they're not going anywhere. The first step in problem solving is step 0. Remove the ambiguity. Is it clear what problems you are expected to solve? That's the question for you to ask yourself when you go back to work tomorrow or whatever it is. Has your management made it explicitly clear what problems you may face on a day-to-day basis and what you're expected to solve, with or without them? Is it clear? Is it clear whether you should, sorry John, but reach out to John for these specific problems before you do anything? Is it clear to your people that work for you what you expect them to solve, what you expect them to solve with you, without you, with the rest of the team? I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses in problem solving in organizations is the up-dumping happens because it's not clear what you expect them to solve on their own. It's true. There would be no up-dumping if they knew exactly what you expected of them. So be clear about what problems you expect them to solve on their own, with you, or what you shouldn't even be solving in your department. Bob graciously has provided a great handout for this that everyone will get afterwards, but it's a nice framework for identifying common problems, what you want them to solve, what you don't want them to solve, what you want to collaborate with, all of those things. So one of my mantras has always been, it's always just an idea until it gets on paper. And it is. So put it on paper and share it with the people if it's not clear. Step 1, this is real simple. Problems are easy. They really are. We overcomplicate problems. The reason that employee gets upset about such a small little task is because they're overwhelmed and they're looking at the macro, the big picture, which overwhelms everyone. I am, by comparative measures, dead broke compared to everybody that's tried to get into this industry. Does that mean I should just walk away? Does that mean that I need to go get more money or something like that? No. means that there's a set of problems that every single person or group of people has to overcome to get into this industry, period. Okay, let's identify what those problems are, and then we start breaking them down to the simplest parts, and we take one by one, just like that first video they showed us in communication. If you want to be NFL first round, you know, you got to run the 40 and 4.2 or whatever. I'm not a football fan, so forgive me. Okay. When you define the problem, keep it simple, engineers. Let's not write a book on here's the problem and this could be, no. It shouldn't be more than one sentence. That's the problem. You get agreement and you start solving it. Use deduction to focus your efforts. This is important. There's been many years where I suffered from insomnia because I wasn't a very good problem solver, or I wasn't very good at deducing things and breaking them down into small bits. So before bed, I would think of this overwhelming problem that I had to conquer. And guess what? You know, 6 in the morning, I'm still up trying to solve that problem in my head, tossing and turning all night long. I'm sure we've all been there. But if you just go to bed with one little fragment of that problem and you start to solve it, you'll go to sleep. Just a tip on you insomniacs. Trust me, it works. Identify fixed versus variable components of the problem. I mean, it's so obvious, but if you're looking at the macro, you're not going to spin the earth any faster, or you're not going to add water or any of those things, but you might be able to change the number of humans, or, you know, maybe that's a terrible analogy that I just came out of my head. But point being is that there are some things you can't change. Well, don't focus on those. Focus on the things that you can change or that are easy to change. Variable. Okay, fixed would be static machine, you know, a 70-ton press or something like that. Well, moving that is, let's just assume that that's fixed for now, because that's definitely not going to be the easiest solution. Room size. Oh, let's just build another building. Have you ever heard that? Let's build another building, right? Yeah. As long as I'm not writing a check, let's build another building. Variable, machine speed, altered processes, placement of material. Focus on the variable components. The add mindset. See, I haven't been an employee in a long time, so I can give you some perspective on, from the people that have to cut the check. I hate the add mindset, and you're going to get to hating the add mindset when all they say is, well, couldn't we just build or buy this or borrow that from that department? That's, you know, that's, I don't know what, if it's a cultural thing or what, but maybe it's an American thing. More is always the solution. No, it's not. Build, buy, and borrow. We're trying to get away from that. Don't talk yourselves out of simple solutions. Generally, that's the answer, is a simple solution. So don't let engineers even talk. No, I love engineers, but I've been 4 years I've been living with engineers in my head, talking to me in their weird language, and chemists and stuff. I'm like, man, you guys kill me. The answer to every problem is usually hiding in plain sight. All right, and then last, test it. See if it works. No, you know, if you chose the simple solution, the most cost-effective solution or the cost-free solution, it's not very hard to test it. But if you had to move this machine and buy this, and you better damn well hope that it works. Let's try the simplest solutions first. So I'm going to give you 2 examples. I'm going to start with this, and we're going to skip some of the steps because I don't follow what I preach. I'm just kidding. First assumption is that we are supposed to solve this problem. Okay, that's step 0. Step 1, what is the problem? Here I have a match. And this match is to hang from my fingers like this. It's going to be lit. Where's the fire smoke detector? It's going to be lit. And I'm going to hold it like this. Or maybe I'll give it to anyone in the room and see who can hold it longer. The point is that when we have the add mindset, it's how can we hold this match longer, right? It has to be up and down. It's going to be lit. How can we hold it longer? You know, whatever it might be, a longer mix on this. Or so think of a real-world example in your world. I guarantee you that the solution to holding this longer is right in front of your face.
Don't light it.
Yeah. So if I just hold it like this, let's see how long I can hold on to it. About 3 seconds, right? So does anybody have a solution for holding it exactly the same way, but maybe holding it for 10 seconds?
Get your hand wet.
I'm not adding anything. I'm trying to avoid adding. You may have to add, don't get me wrong, but we're trying to avoid that. We're keeping these variables exactly the same between one and the other. The solution is right in front of your eyes.
Can't you hold it this way?
No, I'm still going to hold it this way.
Sideways.
Blow it out.
This way, sideways.
I'll show you. It's a long time since I used a book of matches. All right, quality control's an issue at D&D Bean and Sons Matchmaking.
We better not get wet in here.
Let's make sure that this is on. There we go. Here's how I hold it longer. All I do is introduce a little bit of movement to it. And what did I have, about 2 seconds last time? How long was that? Now I'm, what, 7, 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds, 11 seconds. I'm still going. I'm still holding it the exact same way. All right. Now we're going to do some day drinking, my favorite thing. Yeehaw! I was born and raised in Montana. You got to forgive me if you're not. It is pure H2O. All right. This is I always think of presses and what I work on, but think of your own examples. This is one of these fixed variables. Well, it's a variable. You could move the press, but we don't really want to do that if we can avoid it.
This one's all you.
I'm hoping that what you're getting out of this is that the easy answer is usually always the answer. The right answer is hidden in plain sight. We just got to slow down long enough to say, there's only one variable. When I'm holding a match like this and it's lit, what else could you possibly do to hold it longer? There's only one thing. All you can do is move it and create a little buffer of air. That's it. But it's too obvious, so we're looking for more complicated solutions. Same is true here. Here I have a conveyor. I need to put this there. See, everyone see this okay? I have two fixed. I don't want to add anything. Try not to. But what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you see this? Well, let's just add one of these, put it right there, and then stick that last one right on top, right? Let's add. No, we don't have to add. Does anyone have any thoughts? You know what, I'm going to complicate it a little bit. I'm going to add some weight. So let's say that this press, we've just got new tooling or whatever, and now instead of a 20-gram widget, we've got a 2-pound widget. And it's going to go to this press that also has new tooling, but we're basically establishing a new line with old machinery. And that's the conveyor system that is strewn throughout our 30,000 square foot facility, and to replace all the conveyor system would be a small fortune. Maybe that's not the greatest example, but I want to know how I get this to rest there. Does anybody have any ideas? And don't worry.
Scoot the two shot glasses closer together.
Those are 70-ton presses. We're not going to move them.
All right.
Anybody?
Hold the dollar bill into corrugated shape. That's weird.
Ding, ding, ding. I've already done that for us. So using the exact same material, the dollar bill, rather than having you watch me fold this, all we did is give this some rigidity. And turn off the camera just in case this doesn't work. We don't want any evidence. That was a good idea, by the way. So that's all I really have for problem solving. I hope what you take away from this is a few things. One, your people are your greatest asset, whether you like it or not. You can feel like they're a liability every day you show up. But that's your choice. And sometimes there's no denying that feeling. Everybody has bad days, but give them a chance, because those can turn out to be some of the best people you'll ever work with, honestly. They can be. And if they're not, what do I always say, Shane? When in doubt? Just kidding. We don't want to say that. The other thing, the simple solution is usually the answer. You just have to reframe your mind and get away from the add mindset of move this big piece of machinery or add this. And that's where all of our heads go all the time. But if you want the people that saw lots of potential in you and put you in that management position to really be happy about that decision, come up with a solution like that once, and you've paid your way for the next 5 years versus, $400,000 for another press. It's crazy, but that's all. I take questions if you guys have any. I'm not going to solve your problems. I'll just tell you how.
So how many of you guys feel like you are developing a team of problem solvers, like you mentioned, around you? You're not becoming the one that gets up-dumped on. You're actually focusing on professional development as you guys are here today. That's part of it. And this isn't the silver bullet, but how many of you guys are proactively developing teams of problem solvers by equipping them with the tools like this? Raise your hand. Good. What are you doing to do some of that? What are some of the things that you guys are doing?
Well, my management is a little bit interesting because I manage people that are scattered all over the United States. I got 19 guys that work for me. I see them twice a year. So, yeah, this is their only connection to me and me to them. So, yeah, like you said, defining what they're allowed, what decisions they're allowed to make, and when they need to involve me, and make sure that everybody understands that, because, yeah, they know when a problem's too big and they need to call, and then I need to be involved, but otherwise I don't hear from them, so, yeah, just making sure that.
It's the exact same thing Steve spoke about earlier on city limits, county. We've heard it in multiple different formats and versions, but if you can walk away with something is, do they know exactly what's expected of them? And if it's just sit down with them and talk to them about it, you're wasting your time.
And
sure, you should talk to them, but write it down too. Job description he mentioned earlier, or whatever it is.
And the support issue is a big one for me, because they're gonna make some decisions, and whether they're right or wrong, doesn't matter. If they're wrong, we figure out why, and, just tell them, we're all gonna learn from it, and we'll move on. He mentioned earlier about they'll stretch that boundary that you give them. And sometimes it goes right, sometimes it goes wrong, but at least they're thinking. So, the more they do it, that, the less have to do.
I'd like you to just open that up a little bit more, because it sounds like you're having conversations. Are you doing a regular meeting or a conference call, or do you guys have goals, or how you, it sounds like you're building some experimentation into some stuff, some problem solving.
Yeah,
opportunities.
you know, I just make it a point because they're remote. You know, I just make it a point to talk to them. You know, minimum of once a week. You know, and some of them are doing a great job, you know, so I just make it a point to call and ask a few questions, you know, try to spur some thought. And when you ask the questions, you got to listen and kind of be able to read between the lines of what they say, and make sure that, you know, there isn't something just a little off that you need to ask more questions.
It's really good.
And I will make a quick comment on what,
Yeah.
if you have the people you work with right there, accessible, you can see each other face to face, going back to what Cam said about communication and smiling and all those things, it's a huge advantage. Because I've been in that position before, and it's not easy to have them strewn everywhere. You can't build the same rapport if you can sit and have lunch with them or have a face-to-face conversation. You can't, so take advantage of that and be face-to-face with them as often as possible. Shane said it earlier, how often are you down on the floor? How often are you in your office? Or I don't know what everyone's situation is, but the more you're showing your face, the better. Because otherwise, you become those people that you don't want to become. And you aren't. You're dealing with other things, but...
So there
anyone
wasn't
else?
a lot of response to people doing this, developing a team of problem solvers. I'd ask the question, why? Obviously, that's the most, you know, intuitive question would be as to why. Well, what would you guys say the main reason is why we don't do problem solving well? Or do it at all, for that matter? Come on, somebody tell me. What are you guys doing on a daily basis?
It's all
Problem solving.
Put out fires.
Yeah.
Is firefighting the same as being a problem solver? It can be part of it, right? But are we being proactive in our problem solving? We're trying to think of we don't have the time, we don't think, right? Because we're always on the hamster wheel. I'm too busy, I'm too busy. A lot of people were too busy to be here today, and I thank you guys for actually making the time. I know it's challenging to take a full 8-hour day to be here, but you're investing into your people. You're taking that professional development, and you're serious about it. Some of you guys have sent several in your team to be serious about professional development, because you know that problem solving is the reason why you have competitive advantage over everyone else. It's no longer just this Montana market, right?
And
Would you agree that we're global?
oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll add to that that problem solving is easy. It sucks because we make it suck. Honestly. I mean, I've been forced to solve so many damn problems. I'm sick of problems. All I have is problems. But problems are not very big. I don't get overwhelmed by things that, yeah, I'd tell my wife, live a day in my shoes, and I don't want to live a day in yours either, but, and try and go to sleep at night. Because when you focus on that high level and all the complexities and all those things that go into each and every problem you have, it is overwhelming, and you will not be very effective at solving that problem. But if I break it down into, I can't move those 2 glasses, all I have is this. Wait a second, it becomes very clear that I only have one variable. What can I do to this one variable to solve the problem? And it does not take long to fight those fires when you've got that problem. And if you can train people to just deduce quickly, get rid of all the crap that's in your head that is totally irrelevant to solving this problem, and let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Here's the one variable that we can actually change without adding, and see if we can solve that problem. If you can't, well, maybe you do have to add something, but that's always the last choice, as you know, because every time you go to say, hey, we need a new, it's a no, right? Or a come on, no. But anything else?
I'd like to hear you elaborate a little bit more. You're saying to get people to complete their tasks, stop being a task manager. I'd like to hear you elaborate on that a little bit.
That's right.
I said that because there's a difference between a leader and an authoritarian in my eyes. And this is just my opinion, but a leader creates an environment where people want to follow, and therefore they want to please the leader and, you know, make a good cohesive work environment where everyone's happy. Well, one way everyone's happy is you're getting your job done right. But being the task manager, often requires you to be in that authoritarian perception more often than you want to be. That's what I meant is, you know, did you get this done? Well, you know what? That might be part of your daily routine at the end of the day. Where'd we come in and stuff like that. But if it's the constant reminder about the cover letter, that's a task manager. He's an authoritarian. He can lean over your desk and repeat it 3 times to get that task done, which is to put that damn cover letter before you send out that TPS report. That's a task manager. Try not to put yourself in that position to remind them of tasks. They just want to get things done versus, okay, what's your task? You know, you got to be organized and organizing and planning and things like that. It's just part of it. I just try and clump them together. Maybe it's the beginning of the week, end of the week, beginning of the day, end of the day, depending on what that task may be. And I try and avoid the middle. Because when you avoid the middle, you don't become the task manager and the authoritarian that just never freaking lets me breathe. You're always talking, oh, yeah, I heard you this morning, or I heard you at the beginning of the week what we have to get done. Trust me, I'll get it done, or don't. But that's the problem. It's when they disappoint, you think you got to remind them that they didn't get it done. There's other ways to approach it, in my opinion. Anything else?
Just one thing to add, I think all this stuff that we're going through today, we're not done yet. We still have an awesome another presentation here to close it up here. But how do we do this problem solving? There's always this reason why we can't, right? We always have all these things that we say we cannot do it. So there's a tool called Leader Standard Work. And I'm not saying the tool itself is the silver bullet, but it's a helpful thing that I found. It's like I scheduled 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon to get down on the floor and talk to people. I do stand-up meetings. I did those daily. You have your tier meeting with your folks in your area, and then you escalate that to tier 2, and then you got escalation to tier 3, but you're having regular communication. You got to make the time to problem solve. Otherwise, you're always going to be stuck in this area. You know, we always think that we have limited amount of time, but you cannot afford to not make the time to develop problem solvers. You're going to cap yourself. Every one of you guys, I imagine everyone feels stressed and pressured at times being a leader, being a supervisor. Raise your hand. Come on. You guys are liars. No, like, all right, good. You got some hands. Because it's stressful, right? So you have to alleviate yourself, but you have to develop people to think this way. So really good stuff. Give Tad a hand.